All right. Good afternoon, or good morning, everybody. Uh, Seeing a nice little push off the lows here at the moment. Just beating down market here. Bulls finally showing a little bit of activity, buying up that early Monday dip that we saw. Got down to the 55.33 level, fresh multi-month low there in the S&P before reversing and now trying to push back and recover some of that lost ground. Uh, 56.23 as a key level. That would be the Friday close. We'll see if they're able to get through and get us back up to there now, just about 36 points away. Of course, this week, a big item is going to be Liberation Day, and that is why we are bringing in Carmine Atteo right now. Talk a little bit about that, some of the other things that we need to be watching in the backdrop here for the markets this week. So, without any further ado, Carmine, how are you doing today?
Oh, pretty good, Gavin. How was your weekend?
Good. It was good. Just a little bit of traveling back down to North Carolina and
Nice.
everything. So, just did that. How about yourself? How are the tables?
They were pretty good. One of the things I think will be interesting for our subscriber base is that I went to go get my oil change at a Volkswagen dealer on Saturday, and I couldn't believe it. The little rooms where you sign a paperwork when you want to buy a car. Every one of those rooms had somebody in it, and there was about maybe 5 or 10 people that were waiting for an attendant or waiting for a salesperson. So there was seems to be some, at least anecdotal demand for cars before the tariffs kick in.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm kind of curious. I know I'm not in the midst. I'm not in need of a new car, but I was just kind of curious at what kind of deals are going on around out there. I mean, here's my philosophy on it, Carmen. You tell me if you think. I think a lot of people are trying to pile cars in right now before tariffs get in, and I think
Right.
inventory levels are going to outstrip the demand. Was my thinking, and that in about 6 months or so would be a perfect time to get a car if we saw some recessionary data and a big slowdown in demand and inventory had built up in front of COVID. However, or not COVID, in front of the tariffs. But it sounds to me like you're saying that it looks like that the demand is there, anecdotally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, this is just one dealer. I just want to make it clear to everybody, but I just found it interesting because normally when I go there, I don't see anybody in those rooms, or
Sure.
maybe one person, but every room had somebody in there signing paperwork. So it was just interesting. I just thought that was interesting.
I hate those rooms. I feel like every time I go into one of those rooms, it's some salesman that's like, "Hey, let me get back to you," and they go and talk sports for like 45 minutes with their friends, and then come back and tell you that they can't get you the deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see. But yeah, it's going to be real interesting to see how that plays out. And obviously, we saw a 25% tariff being put in by Trump last week. That goes into effect April 3rd, right, Carmine?
Yeah, April 3rd. Yep.
So let's cut to the chase then, and let's talk about Liberation Day. There's been a number of questions for it. We'll go down there. I guess the first question I have for you, Carmine, have they announced the specific time that they're going to announce all these tariffs?
No. Usually they put out the schedule the day of, so you'll see on the schedule, Trump talking about tariffs at 1 o'clock, but they won't release that until the day of. It'll probably be early Wednesday morning. We'll all know. We'll know, and I'll post that to the page about when it's going to be.
My assumption is that they'll do it after hours.
Yeah, my
Um,
that's my assumption too. I
but
think they want to just kind of let everything settle and do that. Yeah, that would be my best guess.
Yeah, so we'll see what's coming on. Either way, hopefully that date does provide a little bit of clarity. So let's talk about that day, Carmine, and some of the things that we should be expecting.
Yeah, so the Wall Street Journal, there's a lot of conflicting reports, as everybody knows, and conflicting statements from the president on this. But the latest Wall Street Journal report says that they're considering, they're going bigger on the tariffs than they originally thought. Now, just last week, you remember that there was reporting, and the president confirmed that they were going to be more lenient, and now they're going to be bigger. So I think what's happening is you have different factions in the White House, right? You probably have like the Scott Bassett wing of Trump's advisors saying they go a little lighter. Then you have like the Peter Navarro side that's pushing him to go a little heavier. And both of these people are kind of leaking things out to the press that benefits their side, right? So I expect more of these types of reports to come out that basically contradict each other. You might be a report in the Washington Post saying one thing, there might be a report in Bloomberg saying another thing, there might be a report in Wall Street Journal saying something totally different. Because I think that's what's happening is there's all these factions in the White House are basically trying to influence the president in a way to get their point across. But the Wall Street Journal story also mentioned that Trump is considering going back to his original plan of a 20% universal tariff on all imports from all countries. That would make things a little simpler, rather than having all these different rates and all these different products and things. So I think there's a good chance he goes with that. But we'll see what happens. There's any number of possibilities. My thought right now is he's going to go bigger than what we thought last week when he was saying he was going to be more lenient. We'll see. It could go a number of ways. I think depending on how big the tariffs are, if there's a universal tariff on everything, yeah, it'll be simpler, but I think that'll be a negative for the markets because I think and then if there's reciprocal tariffs that are not as more lenient as the president says, then I think that will be a positive for the markets. But I think we'll get at least some clarity this week on which way they're going to go. I don't even think the president knows what he wants to do right now. That's the thing. So all these reports saying he's going to do this or do that, I think, like I said, that those are factions within the White House leaking stuff. I don't think the president's made a decision one way or another.
Well, I mean, there's got to be hopefully some sense of a plan going on,
Yeah,
other
hopefully.
than just
Yeah.
figuring out how Trump feels when he gets up in the morning. I mean, so that's something that they could go up with a plan and he could just totally change it and reverse course while he's up on the podium, right, Carmine?
Well, I mean, he could, but I think so they'll have all the paperwork drafted for him. So I think once he decides what he wants to do, then that's what he's going to do. But I wouldn't expect that until probably Wednesday, because it could change a few more times between now and Wednesday. But I think once we get to Wednesday, we'll know what he wants to do, and that'll be what the plan is.
All right. So what would be some of the areas that could get carved out if they do decide to do the carve outs?
Yeah, so the Pacific areas that I think might get targeted or more than others are, the president talked about, are pharmaceuticals and chips, because he feels that a lot of the production has gone overseas, and that hurts us if there's like a war or something, or a pandemic or whatever. So I think those are probably off the table as far as carve outs. The other areas as far as carve outs are, I think, could possibly be our USMCA compliant goods. We'll see if that gets extended because you remember back from the March tariffs on Mexico and Canada, they exempted the USMCA compliant goods until, which is about maybe 75% of them, until April 2nd. So I'm interested to see if that continues, that carve out. I think there's a good possibility that carve out continues. So we'll see if anybody else gets any exemptions. Of course, he's pretty close with Tim Cook, so there might be an exemption there for Apple and some of the other tech companies. So we'll see what happens there. But other than that, I think that this is going to be pretty broad and well-reaching because of the reports I'm reading over the weekend from the Washington Post and Wall Street Journal say the president thinks that this is not only a way to bring manufacturing back, but a way to raise revenue and lower the deficit. Now, the problem with that thinking is that if you I don't want to use the word crash, but if you depress the economy in a way, then the consumer spending is going to slow down, and you won't get that that expected revenue, is assuming that the demand stays where it is, and if the economy slows down, the demand is not going to stay where it is, as you know, Gavin, and then that revenue will decline, not go up. So, but he feels that that's a way to get the lower the deficits, as you was talking about. That's one of the things that was mentioned in the Washington Post report. So, we'll see. I think there's any numbers way to go, but I think right now, if I had to guess, it'll be bigger than what we thought last week.
All right, so that is where Carmine is leading. Now, what's Trump had to say about the automobiles tariffs that were announced last week?
Yeah, so he said those come into effect April 30th. He said these will be permanent. Um, and he calls on Congress to make interest on auto loans tax deductible, which is something they possibly could include in a reconciliation bill, which we'll talk about in a minute. But and he also made a very interesting comment that I think will be pretty political fodder for the other side. That he quote could care less if automakers increase their prices because he feels that it'll be an incentive to people to purchase U.S. made cars. I think that's going to be in a lot of Democratic ads for the midterms. But that's where he kind of stands on that. I wouldn't expect these auto tariffs to go away anytime soon.
All right. So something we'll be watching there. Now, Carmine, I have heard that the Trump administration is looking to provide some stimulus to farmers and perhaps other people in order to offset the decline there.
Yeah,
Tough to balance the budget if you're looking to offer stimulus to get through a bumpy patch that you created. So,
yeah.
how does that work out?
Yeah, I mean that. I mean, I think that that'll be up to Congress. I mean, he does have a lot of pull, but it's going to be tough. I think because I think the budget hawks, especially in the House, will push back on that. I think the budget hawks are probably against the tariffs, privately, but they don't want to say publicly, and they're probably telling me, you know what, if you don't want the farmers to be impacted by this, you make an exemption for them and the tariffs. I think that's what they're probably telling behind closed doors, and I think that's probably a more likely scenario than the Congress approving a stimulus for the farmers.
All right. Let me ask you, Carmine. So, Section 232, that's basically the president's able to do whatever they want with tariffs in a time of emergency.
Right,
Am I right? So,
which you declared already. Yeah,
yeah. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about this. And you've just said, there's no, because I'm of the mindset that at some point this Congress is going to want to rein in that power. I mean, number one, what's an emergency? It seems to be certainly pretty flimsy with what can be given.
yeah.
So I don't know if that's something legally that they could go to court with and have that reversed that it's not an emergency, whatever it might be. But let me ask you, Carl. I know you've said that need 60 votes never going to happen unless there's obviously a massive blue wave in 2 years, whatever. But can Congress tie tax cuts to that 232 power?
It's possible, but I don't think they would do that because the Trump right now still has a lot of sway within the Republican Party right now. I mean, if you look at the most recent, they had like four approval rating polls that came out over the weekend. You had Harvard Trump's at a 489, Rasmussen Trump's at 50, CBS Trump's at 50, JL Partners Trump's at 49, and AP Trump's at 42. So the AP is a little lower than all the rest of these. But if you average everybody together, he's about a -2 or so. I mean, that's not really enough at that point for Congress to turn up against him because you have to the problem with Congress is that a congressperson or a senator doesn't really care about a national opinion on a topic, right? They care about the opinion in their district or their state that they represent, and a lot of these folks are in such Republican areas that it's not going to really impact them in a national election. They might, if they had a special election, which we're going to talk about in a minute, they might be in trouble. But when a national election like a midterm or a presidential year, when everybody votes, it's not going to impact them. So that's how they kind of feel about that, right or wrong. And so the way the 232 authority works is Congress could override the president on the national emergency. That they can basically say you're nuts. This is an emergency. But what they would need to do with that is they would need 2/3 of the House, which is 280 members, which means they would have needed 70 Republicans along with all the rest of the Democrats, and they would need 67 senators. So they would need 20 Democrats along with the 47 Democrats to do that. So you see that's the problem with that is that there's such a heavy lift, and then I don't think it's ever going to happen because even if there's not really even that many states up in 2026 for them to get anywhere near that, right? So even if they like won like Wyoming and Nebraska, which is not they're not going to do, but like hypothetically speaking, they did, they wouldn't even get to 60 if they did that. So that's the problem that they have there, and you know, that's why I feel right now that philosophically speaking, I agree with you that I think there should be some restrictions on that because we have checks and balances in the government, but I just don't think it's ever going to happen based on what the dynamics are right now. Going on. So I wouldn't expect that. But it's something to keep an eye on. There was one There's one congressperson that suggested that, but that's just one. You need a lot more than that, right? So you need 70 more in the House and 20 more in the Senate. So I think we're far from that point. But I mean, you can keep an eye on it. But right now, as of right now, I don't think it's going to happen.
All right. Let's turn our attention to the Ukraine and Russia and some recent comments. I know Trump's stated that he's very angry with Putin, which
And pissed
puts
off.
Putin on the same side of history as everybody else on the world outside of the 73 million people that didn't vote for Trump. I feel like he's angry at everybody else in the world. So we'll add Putin to that now. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in that situation and where things stand.
So before I get into that, I want you to guess, Gavin, how many phone calls do you think Kristen Welker received from the President of the United States over the weekend?
Four.
You're close. Three. three
Uh,
separate. Three
in
separate.
regards to
The first thing that they talked about was the Russia thing, which we'll talk about now, and then they talked about running for a third term, which we'll
so
talk
wait,
about.
does he just call up while she's on the air or
No, no,
something?
no. She wasn't on the air. She said when she came on the air, she said she talked to him on Saturday twice, and she talked to him in the Sunday morning once.
Okay.
So, yeah, but he, I guess she's on his speed dial, but
Yeah, he must be a fan of hers, I guess, if he's chatting that much with her, right? So
yeah. So, Christian Walker gave did a phone interview with the president, and he said he was very quote very angry and very pissed off at Vladimir Putin, and he couldn't because of the Ukraine situation, and he said he could impose secondary tariffs on Russia. Now, what a secondary tariff it basically means is that anyone buying Russian oil would be a tariff on the U.S. products. So if China buys Russian oil, they would add additional tariffs to whatever tariffs we have on now to Russian oil. So, and he's also told Kristen Welker that he's considering bombing Iran if they do not make a nuclear deal. So I think that's one of the reasons for strength in oil prices, and and so we'll keep an eye out on that.
so with the bombing of Iran, I assume he means their nuclear
Yeah,
facilities.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, nuclear sites and oil, possibly the oil facilities too. Yeah, not a
Is there a
broad.
deal on the table right now, Carmine, or?
No, I mean, so Iran rejected the talks for the nuclear talks. So I said a couple weeks ago that I felt that either I think it's more likely than the U.S. kind of going in there, alone is basically Trump giving the green light to Netanyahu and saying, hey, you go ahead and take care of them. I think that's more likely than the U.S. will support them in a way, like maybe provide air cover or stuff like that, or defense purposes as well. So I think that's more likely. Over the I think that's going to happen over the next few weeks or months. Is that either U.S. goes attacks their nuclear facilities, which I think is less likely, or basically that Trump gives Netanyahu the green light to do that from the Israeli side, which I think is more likely.
All right. It doesn't sound like it's much of a nuclear deal as much as a nuclear threat from Trump.
Yeah.
Are there any things that are thrown in on the negotiation here, like in terms of
Well, he has.
unlocking Iranian oil? Has there been any discussion on that, Carmine? I don't know what deal he's mad about them walking away from. So I'm just kind
Yeah,
of
well, he
curious.
wants them. Yeah, so Trump pulled out of the Iranian nuclear deal that Obama negotiated several years ago, right? So
Right.
now he wants them to do another deal, another nuclear deal that basically prevents them from having a nuclear weapon. But according to Bloomberg, it doesn't look like Iran is being very perceptive towards that. Basically, they provided after Trump's threat, they said he rejects. According to Bloomberg, Iran says it rejects direct U.S. talks in reply to Trump's letter. So basically, Trump's letter said that we want to try to make a deal where you guys don't have a nuclear weapon, maybe sanctions relief and so forth. But Iran, rejected that, and we're pretty careening toward a possible conflict with Iran. But I think again, it's to be more likely come from the Israeli side.
Where do you think the global opinion falls on that, Carmine?
The global opinion, I think it's hard to say global, but I know in the U.S. I think that
In the
the
U.S., they'll probably we know that Trump's base will be for it, and
Yeah, so
there
it'll be
won't be
split.
uproar and anger. But I'd be curious at what you thought Europe would
Europe,
do in reaction to
yeah,
something like
Europe,
this.
yeah, Europe, Europe. I don't think if it is if Israel, says, hey, we're going to do that. I don't think Europe will provide them with any help, but I don't think Europe would, say, you guys are nuts for doing that. But it's hard to say right now. I don't think Europe would be involved in the conflict, though. That's the thing. But I think that Europe might, kind of keep their mouth shut and say, we kind of support this in a way, but we're not going to provide you with any help. So it's hard to say right now, but that's what would be my best guess.
Okay. Let's talk a little China then. They are obviously on the table here for their tariffs as well. But we also have on Friday the deadline for the TikTok deal, right? So
Yeah, Saturday. Yeah.
how, how can Saturday I should say, sorry. How could that factor into things?
Yeah, so Trump says he might use it, give China a reduction in tariffs to complete the TikTok deal. There was another report this morning that they expect the deal to be done by Saturday. If the deal is done by Saturday and TikTok is still alive and well, that's a negative for Meta and Snap. But if TikTok goes away, which I'm not expecting, but if that goes away, then it would be a positive for Meta and Snap because in theory they would get more customers. But that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. I think they'll get that done. It looks to me, based on the reporting, that they're pretty close. I'm not sure if China will get a reduction in tariffs, but I think that's something that was thrown out there. But we'll see what China gets in return on that.
Okay, we'll be watching that. Obviously, names involved there: Meta Platform, Snap, and
So in a way,
Pinterest as
smaller
well.
amount.
Yeah. So next up, Trump looking to possibly go for a third term. What's going on there, Carmine?
Okay, so in his third interview with Kristen Welker, he talked about a third term, and he talked about this plan where J.D. Vance would run for president, and if he would win, he would resign. Well, basically, they would switch spots on the ticket, and if J.D. Vance would run, and he would resign, and then Trump would become the president again for the third term. Now, that's going to create a lot of legal issues if you try to do that. The 22nd Amendment states that no person shall be elected, the key word elected, to the presidency more than twice. It doesn't say that, you can get there some other way. So this is kind of the loophole that they're trying to execute with this, but this is going to be subject to massive court challenges if he tries to do that, and the Supreme Court will probably have the ultimate say. Oh, not probably. The Supreme Court will have the ultimate say. And you know what? To be honest with you, I mean, this is kind of getting way ahead of things, but I think that if Trump were to do this and make it public that, hey, this is what our plan is, that the Democrats would do the same thing with Obama.
It would
And
be,
yeah, and I think that would be a Democratic sweep, but we'll see. But that's a long way to go.
yeah, that would be quite interesting if they went that route. And just the precedents that it sets moving forward. George Washington, I'm sure, must be rolling in his grave. I assume, given the GOP is all very agreeable to Trump, that JD Vance would have no problem with this. There wouldn't be any egos that would be
No,
involved.
I mean he's a young guy. He probably figures he'll probably. I mean, if this is, I mean, again, we're getting way ahead of ourselves here. But if this is something theoretically that Trump wanted to do, he would probably go along with it because he doesn't want to upset Trump's base, and he feels that eventually Trump won't be here, one way or another, and but eventually he won't be running for president because he'll be too old to do the job, or he passed away or whatever. So then at that point, then he can take the mantle. So but so that's I think that'll be Vance's thinking there.
It doesn't seem like Trump would want to give it up till he was 100 or so. So we'll see how long he's got to go. Signalgate, Carmine, obviously, that was a pretty big issue over the last week or so, covered by the press. What's going on there? Any fallout from that?
Yeah, so Mike Waltz is pretty much in the hot seat here on this. As you know, he accidentally texted a reporter from the Atlantic war plans for the strikes on the Houthi rebels. Trump said he still has confidence in him, but there was reporting over the weekend that kind of Vance was really upset with him on this issue. Vance was on the thread as well, but he was upset that the reporter was added, obviously. So, one
Have they
part of
figured out exactly how he was put
he,
on?
he said that so this doesn't make any sense. So Mike Wall said the name got kind of he thought the name was somebody else, but it was marked as somebody else, and he he put the name on there thinking it was somebody else, and it was actually this person. So he said he didn't the number quote unquote got sucked into his phone. I don't know what that means. I never had a number suck into my phone before,
Yeah.
but so I'm not sure what that means. But he said basically that it was a mistake, and that he didn't mean to put that person on there. He meant to put somebody else, whether it was
So
a
he definitely put it on though. It wasn't like something where
yeah, he
somebody
did.
else put it in. Okay.
Yeah, if you look at who else was in the hot seat too, Pete Hitchcock is also in the hot seat because he kind of started the whole signal thing. From the president's perspective, he's an older man, so he's like, I don't even use Signal. I don't even know what Signal is, and to be honest, which I think that's probably true. so,
Yeah.
so yeah, so but
I had no idea what it was. I started hearing about Signal Gate myself. So
yeah, so um, we'll see how this happens. But I think that Waltz is going to be okay for now. When it's very likely to me that Democrats will take the House in 2026, and when that happens, I think there'll be a lot of investigations into what happened. But right now, I think they'll have cover from the party on that.
yeah, there wouldn't be any preemptive moves in front of that then, Carmine, right?
I don't think so. I mean, they'll talk the talk like, "Hey, we're gonna look at it. We're gonna see what happened. We want to know what happened." But they're not gonna have us point any like special prosecutor or anything to do that, which the Democrats might demand that they do if they take the House. So
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Congress then. Obviously, debt ceiling is starting to get in underway here, and the new legislation the upcoming um, for the upcoming budget. So, where do we stand on that right now, Carmine? What are some of the things we need to be looking at over the next few months?
yeah, so Trump told Senate that he wants the debt ceiling increase included in tax reform legislation. The Senate GOP seems really supportive of that idea. It's Republicans' goal to vote on the reconciliation resolution by Friday, which is the first step of the process. Now, the first step of the process is for both places to pass that resolution, and then they can draft the actual bill and then vote on that. So it's the Senate's goal to pass this by the end of the week, and then the House will vote next week. And then once both sides pass the resolution, then they'll after they come back from the Easter break, they'll start working on the actual legislation, and that's the plan. The plan right now. The first step on Wednesday, the Senate's going to have a meeting with the Senate parliamentarian, which we talked about last week, about this plan to keep the what they're calling a current policy baseline, which means that they don't think it's really going to add. They don't think that this is a deficit negative because they're just keeping the same policy. Now, if the parliamentarian comes back and says you guys are nuts, that's not how the deficit works. That, of course, as soon as we increase the deficit, then they have to then this whole plan is going to be out the window, and they're going to have to go probably with the House plan that was passed, and then they'll have to might have to vote on that one. But if they do that, if some parliamentarian says, okay, you guys are that's cool with me, you guys can go ahead and do that, then they'll vote on this and by Friday, and then this will go to the House for next week. So right now, I'm thinking that the parliamentarian will say, that's okay. But it could go either way. It's hard for me right now to see which way that will go. But I think that they'll say it's okay. But the reason why I say it is because I think that they're kind of making all these plans about when they're going to vote and when they're going to bring it up for a vote, and I don't think they would they would do that unless they kind of got the wink wink from the parliamentarian and say, hey, this is behind closed doors that this was okay ahead of time. Then if it goes down, then that's a real embarrassment. So I think right now it's going to be okay, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Now there was some hints that they could make some changes to the tax rates on wealthier Americans over the weekend. Carmen, why don't you tell us a little bit of what's going on there?
Yeah, that was interesting because the White House they said that they're considering allowing tax rates on the wealthy Americans to rise to pay for the other tax cuts. Unlike no tax on Social Security, no tax on tips, and no tax on overtime. So that's an interesting idea that'll offset that. Obviously, that's better
Well,
than 50%.
it's not that interesting of an idea, right? I mean, the Democrats have basically been saying the fair share and tax the 1% for the
Yeah,
last 20 years. So
yeah.
it sounds
Well,
more
it's
like
interesting.
that they're just becoming turning into the Democratic
Yeah,
Party to
well,
a
yeah, that's
certain
true. That's
extent,
true.
right?
I'm just saying it's an interesting idea coming from the Republican side,
Yeah.
because you usually don't hear that from them. But with the way the party's been changing, and kudos to you on this, Gavin, because you talked about this a while ago that you thought that this might be possible because of the way the parties were changing, and so I think it's. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think if Trump wants this, he's going to get it, right? So it depends on what he pushes or not. But we won't probably know about that until after they start drafting a bill, which will be after the Easter recess. So we'll see. But if he wants that, I think he'll get it right now. Because of his sway over the party. So we'll see.
Okay. And there's also talks like with salt deductions and stuff
Yeah,
going on for that would be included in that, or like eliminating salt deductions for companies, correct?
yeah, exactly, and that's possible too, and that'll help get the support of the New York Republicans and the California Republicans, which they're going to need. I mean, there's only a few there, but a few is enough to tank things, so they're going to have to make them happy with the salt. So that's part of the reason too.
S- Okay, it feels like that offsets some of the wealth tax, I suppose.
Yeah, it does. It does because basically, if you're lowering the cap on salt, that's that deficit negative, right? Meaning it increases the deficit. But if you're raising the taxes on the wealthy, that lowers the deficit. So we'll have to wait for the CBO score. It's hard to say right now because there's not even a bill drafted yet. So, but we'll have to wait for the CBO score to see how those actually balance out or not.
Has the CBO scored the tariffs?
But see, they don't because it's not legislation. It's all through the White House. So
Right, but I
um,
mean, it would deal with revenue in terms of if they're trying to figure out what the budget's going to
yeah, you know
be,
what?
right?
That's a good point. I mean, they
I know
should.
it's only knowing half of the equation, but I would think that they would kind of be looking at that for what they anticipate it will bring in terms of revenue.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point. I mean, they usually don't talk about things that are not congressional legislation, but I think it's a very good thing for them to do.
Yeah.
So we know exactly what the revenue is going to be, but I'm not sure if they'll do it or not. That they've never done it before in the past. So, but I think maybe somebody will suggest that, and maybe they will. I would like to know. So.
All right. Let's see. Moving on. A couple of special elections this week, Carmine, that we want to watch.
Yeah, so this is gonna be interesting. So there's two special elections in Florida for House seats. The Florida first state, which was originally occupied by Matt Gaetz, that looks pretty safe for the Republicans. If you look at the early vote, the Republicans have about a 19-point lead in the early vote. By party. So they should be safe pretty there. The one that I think it could be a little bit of upset here is the Florida sixth congressional district. Now, if you
But
look at
Trump
the
won
early,
that by 33 or something like
yeah,
that.
Trump won that by 30. So it'll be interesting if this goes the other way because during these special elections, I think Steve Kornacki of NBC said this best. Basically, Democrats have the advantage on this in these low turnout elections because the intense engagement is always among highly educated, higher income voters. And those are the people that are more likely to turn out in these things. So, who are the more educated, higher income voters? The Democratic base, right? So that's why you'll see, like for example, you might see an upset here, but it might not necessarily transform into anything for the midterms or for the general election, at least in that seat. Like for example, if the Democrats win this seat, they'll probably lose it again 2 years later, when everybody votes. But even if they might win the House, but they lose this seat, so which they won't care about if they win the House. But that's kind of what the dynamic is, right, with these special elections. So, if you look at for Florida six, which is I think the one that everybody's gonna be watching. Now, just to kind of set the table here, if the Republicans lose this seat, they'll be back down to a 219 to 217 to 216 majority. So they can only lose one vote for legislation, and that one vote already is Thomas Massey. He already said he's not voting for anything that increases the deficit, no matter what. Trump can't convince him. Trump can't do anything to convince him. He's not voting for anything. So you already assume that he lost that vote. So
Trump's going to primary him, I'm assuming.
yeah, he's probably already dealing with that. So
Add
um,
him to Vladimir Putin on the Trump hate list.
Yeah, yeah. He's upset with a lot of people. So
A lot of people.
yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, but Thomas Massey, I mean, to his credit, he did the same thing when Biden was president. He said they're doing the same thing now, so he's consistent no matter who's in office. So, um, but if you look at if they lose this, they'll be down to one seat majority, and that's the problem because they can only lose Massey and no one else. If somebody's like, if somebody, God forbid, gets sick or has a family issue or whatever, then they can't pass anything, right? So that's the problem they have. So they really want these two seats to go towards the Republican side. So the Florida 6th congressional district, if you look at the early vote, the Republicans have 40. The Republican Party, 47,403 registered Republicans have voted in the primary so far. Again, these are very, very small numbers compared to a general election, right? So that's the part of the problem. The Democratic, 38,107 Democrats voted in the primary so far, and 15,425 independents voted in the primary so far. Now, if this was a general election, I would say that most of those independents would lean right because this is a Republican area, right? But this is a special election, so I'm thinking that most of those independents are voting for the Democrat in the race, and so I think that this is going to be a very, very close. And right now, I mean, if you look at the betting market, there's about a 15% chance that the Democrat wins. I think that's pretty low. I think there's probably maybe a 40% chance he wins because I think most of these independent votes and these early vote is going toward the Democrats. So, right now, I'm going to put my neck out there. I'm going to say the Democrats are going to win this because
Okay.
I think it's against consensus. I mean, just to be clear, most people don't agree with me on this, but I'm going to think the Democrats are going to win this. And if that happens, I think there's going to be a lot of consultation about this tax bill, right? Because you're only going to be down to one person, they might
Well, would
have
it be about the tax bill or would it be about tariffs? You think that?
tariffs. Well, tariffs too,
Yeah.
and but the
What day's the election on Tuesday?
Tuesday, yeah,
Okay,
Tuesday,
so that will come before the tariff announcement,
yeah,
right?
come tariff
So
announcement.
would you view a win by if we come in Wednesday morning, and we talked about it, we don't know what kind of mood Trump's going to get up in that day and decide what level he's going to put on. Would you be expecting a little bit lighter tariffs if we did see the Democrat win the Florida 6 seat?
Yes, yes, because I think that uh, I think that
So
people
we could
advise.
maybe rally on that news, you think,
Yeah,
early,
I think that.
potentially.
Yeah, so I think that if that comes, let's say the Democrat wins this seat, right? Again, the odds are probably, most people are saying that the Republican are win, but I think the Democrat has a good shot. So if um, if the Democrat does win, I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure on Trump from members of Congress to lower these tariffs. Now, the Congress is not going to go as far as to take authority away from him, but they're going to put pressure on him to try to lower this stuff. They're going to say we're going to come out publicly against you. We're going to say that this is bad, blah blah blah. And there's other ways that they could put pressure on him besides taking away the authority. So I think that could be very possible. And I think the more I don't want to call them dovish, more dovish people in the administration, like Scott Bissett or so forth, might also put pressure on the president and say, "Hey, we just lost this race and we were supposed to win, right? You got to try to push it back on this." And also, the reason why I mentioned the tax bill is not that there'll be outrage against that. It's because when you get down to one seat, then that puts a lot of that in jeopardy, right? So that's why I mentioned the tax bill. But you're right, 100% right. Is that there will be a lot of consternation among tariffs as well. So we'll see what happens. I think this race is going to be very important. The polls close at 7 p.m. Eastern time. In Florida, they count very quickly, so we'll probably know within before 9 o'clock or so. Right now, there's about 102,000 early votes, and those votes are probably going to hit right away. Now, if the Republican Randy Fine is ahead in the early votes, book the win for him. It's done. It's over. He's gonna win because. But if the Democrat is up by like 4%, it's gonna be interesting. If he's up by like 5%, I think the Democrats gonna win. So, so we'll see what happens. But when you're dealing with these low numbers, like 47,000 people, 38,000 people, it's very, very easy to switch things, right? When you're dealing with numbers that are in the hundreds of thousands, 10,000 votes might not make a difference, but in this case, it does. So, so that's what the issue is with these special elections.
All right. Anything that we didn't touch upon here, Carmine? We
That's
took
pretty
the,
much
we
it.
took the extra time. Any chance we could get you back in here either Wednesday afternoon or Thursday?
Absolutely. Anytime you want me.
Like how I threw you on the spot in front of everybody there, Carmine.
I didn't get it. What happened?
I like how I put you on the spot in front of everybody there, so you couldn't say no, Carmine.
Oh, no, no, no. I love to come on. So either way, we're good. So
Well, hey, we always appreciate you coming on here and giving us all the skinny. We'll definitely keep an eye out on that Florida election. Should be pretty interesting. And it looks like
yeah, remember there's
the
two.
markets have
The
liked what
net
you've
gain
had to
seats that
say,
the
Carmine,
Republicans are going
too.
to win, but the other one is where that was originally held by Mike Waltz, which is ironic considering the signal gate thing. That's the one I think a lot of more people are worried about.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, we'll be watching out for those, certainly factoring them in, and appreciate you coming on here, Carmine, and giving us your insight into all these matters.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kevin.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, Carmine. Thank you.